Okay, so the recording's on. There is no waiting room, Bernadette, and I let everybody in, so she should, unless she's trying to come in on Zoom, you may want to text her and tell her she's using the wrong thing. Okay? Does one join me? All right. Can you email her or text her? Because maybe she pulled the wrong link. Okay? All right. But anyway, I'm gonna get started. Some of you may be new to join me, so I'm just going to give you a quick lesson if you haven't figured it out already on how to use the chat box, and then we'll get rolling. I don't know that we'll go a whole hour. We'll see. Maybe we will. Anyway, so what you're going to see on the top of your screen are these icons. One looks, the green ones. These are a picture. What you want to do is look at the one that looks like a cartoon bubble and select that. You're going to get a box that looks like, I don't know why I clicked out, but you're going to get a box that looks like this. And what you want to do is type on the bottom. Now, it may look slightly different depending on what browser you're on, but that should give you a general idea. If you haven't done so already, can you put your name and where you're from in the chat box? If you've done already, no need to do it again. And we still have a couple of people coming in. All right. So anyway, I try to shut off as many things as I can when we're doing this. Okay, so welcome. All right, so this is kind of a little bit unique. I know a number of you have taken other webinars that I've done on Excel, but this is kind of like a little subset of a problem or challenge and how you can solve it. We're largely going to look at how you use tables for this. And so I created a little fake survey. It's intentionally has some not major problems, but things that make it harder to create charts from the survey data, but you may not always have control over that. So I wanted to kind of give you a realistic survey. So anyway, just going to show you a picture of the survey, and then we're going to look at the results. This survey actually I just did in Google Forms, but this could have been from anything. SurveyMonkey, Microsoft Forms, doesn't really matter. You would get a similar end result. So let me take you through the questions. Name, which obviously not going to chart. Title, how many years you've been in the district. And by the way, there's an error on this one that I ended up fixing in the chart. I didn't put years in, but it doesn't matter. Over here, it says 16 to 25. And then really the same question answered as an open-ended question, okay? Just to show you how you might do it differently, depending, how you might manage it either way, okay? And then we have a couple of open-ended questions. What do you like? What do you find the challenges in your job? What are you concerned? I did a kind of a survey similar to one of the districts asked me to analyze. We just asked employees some questions. And then in the end, we just have some ones where, they're kind of like forced choices, but they're closed-ended, okay? So you can either select one of the four choices: substandard, adequate, average. So that just gives you an idea of the survey. And if you downloaded the template included, and I gave you a couple of copies of it, mostly so you could play with it, but included the end results of the survey that were ported into Excel. Okay, so let's now go into Excel and take a look at this survey. So there's just a couple quick things I did here. Sometimes the result of the survey, it may not produce as clean a titles on top, so I just kind of cleaned them up. But basically, usually whenever you do a survey and you're going to port it in, what you're going to end up with is, a header row, and then you're going to get the responses with each of the responses being a row, okay? So we're going to actually go through the steps of how you do this. Now, what I would say is this. It's not that complicated to do, but sometimes these can be time-consuming. So if I did this whole survey with you, it would take about 3 hours. So I'm only going to do a couple of pieces with you to show you some of the features, but it's not hard, but it just does take time, particularly when you're dealing with the more open-ended questions, and we're just going to address that. So let me start actually just by kind of showing you what the survey would look like. It wouldn't have any of these extra columns that I'm going to add. So the first question we're really going to look at is the one that involved the number of years. And in this survey, I cleaned it up. I added the word years. So the first thing that you want to do when you do the survey, when you want to create a chart from the survey, is you want to convert that Excel chart into a table, okay? So I'll go to actually this one, which is not in a table. It's just kind of the blank template, and show you how you can create a table, because that's the first step, okay? I did, Bernadette, and I don't have anybody waiting. So I'm wondering if she's trying to come in on the wrong system, okay? Can you forward her the email that has the Join Me info? Okay. Yeah, because I think that's what it is. Sometimes a person will pick it up and they'll try to come in on Zoom or whatever. Okay. All right. So anyway, so this is tabular data, but it's not a table. So the first step is to take your data and put it in a table. Okay, so I'm assuming you don't have any, there's no assumption of prior knowledge here, so that's why I'm going through all the steps. Okay, so if your data is set up correctly, meaning it's tabular already, you don't actually even have to select ranges to get your data into a table. You can pretty much select any cell within that range and go to Insert and select Tables. It's going to ask, does your table have a header row? Notice it picked up the range. So I could have selected the ranges, but it does everything for you. Yes, I have a header row, because that's the one with all the titles. And then you're going to hit OK, and now it's going to create your survey. Now, I personally hate this blue, and in particular for doing this work. I don't know why. Okay. Okay, I'm good that you got in. You never know. Okay. So anyway, so the first thing I always do is get rid of all the colors to work with. Okay. Beth, you made it. Welcome. All right. All right. So is everybody clear on that? I'm now in a table. How do you know you're in a table? Because you have these little, drop-down buttons. Okay. So that's the first step. You've got to turn your data into a table. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the one that I already created just to save a little bit of time so I can get you through all of this. So the first thing that I do is I create another column. And again, I can show you it here, okay, even though. So I'm going to go, let's say I want to look at all this information on the years. I'm going to go and right-click, and I'm just going to insert a column. And it usually inserts it in the right place to the left, where you want. So you need an extra column to be able to do this, okay? You can even have two of them. But let me go back to my survey because I did it already, and it'll save a little bit of time as we go over this. Okay, so the first thing you need to do, and actually I could have even moved this over, is I need to indicate all the survey responses, all the potential answers here, okay? So this one's fairly easy because it's all closed-ended. It's 1 to 5 years, etc. So I need all the choices down here, okay? So that's my first step, okay? Second step is I'm going to go into my little bar here, the drop-down. Well, actually, even before I do that, one more thing. Whenever you're in a table, you're going to get an extra table tab, okay? And you want to select that tab, and you want to select total row. That's normally not selected. You need to select it. Okay, because that's going to save a lot of time, and we're going to be able to take advantage of one of the tabular features that's really awesome. So you have to hit total row. When you hit total row, it usually just totals up your end. But you can actually do, once you have that, you can have a total for each one of the columns. And this is where it's really going to get cool. Now, I've done this already, so it's here, okay? So once you do total row, you can select any row. Now, you can pick one I hadn't done already, and you'll get a little drop-down bar that gives you an ability. By the way, you're going to learn some things here that are useful for other things. So you can immediately sum, average, take the highest item, the largest item, smallest item, etc., and it will automatically total those. You don't have to use any of those conditional things like count or count if. It does it all automatically. This is why this is so great, okay? So what you want to do, and I'm going to go back to the one that I did already, is you want to come over here and you want to select count. The reason you're selecting count, it says count and count numbers. If it's all just numbers, you can use count numbers. But if it involves any text, like number of years, you have to use count. And in most cases here for survey data, you're going to select count, okay? So there were, in the response to the survey, there were 50 responses. By the way, if it's a blank, it won't show up, okay? So there were 50, everybody answered this question, okay? So there were 50. Everybody with me so far? Pretty easy, right? So here's where it really gets cool, okay? So if you go up to the filter bar on top, this little triangle on top, it allows you to filter your data based on all the selections. So because this is a closed-end question, it's very easy, okay? So if I want to know how many people were 1 to 5 years, all I have to do is go and select only that. And the total it gives me are the total for that item, okay? So now you can decide whether you want to bother to copy and paste or you just want to copy down the number. Frankly, I'm beginning to think it just might be easier to just copy down the number. So once you have the 14, you can just type in 14. But if you do want to copy and paste, this is really important. When you copy and paste, make sure you do a paste special and paste values. And here's the reason, because I'm going to do it wrong. If you do copy and then you do paste, and you just do a regular paste, looks like a 14. But if you take the filter, say, and you select all the filters, right, so you're back to 50, that changes to 50. And so that's not going to help you, because what we need to do is how many people were 1 to 4 years. So when you do it, you have to make sure either you manually copy it down, which will now again give me 14. You either have to manually copy it down, meaning I just type in 14, or I have to copy and then make sure I paste special for each one of these and paste values. Okay, actually I messed that up because I pasted it in the same place. Okay, so here I'm just going to type, I'm going to copy, I'm now going to paste values. Now if I get rid of the filter and I'm back to everyone, this still remains 14. Any questions so far? Everybody good? Okay, so how do you filter? I can answer that. So at the top of each one of the columns, so we're just looking at the question, how many years have you worked in the district, okay? At the top of each one of the columns, you see this drop-down menu. It's going to show you the filters, all the choices. So the typical way is you just unselect it and pick the one you want. So if I want to, it's interesting, it shows them alphabetically, so the next one I would do is 6 to 10 years, right? So just stay in order. And now it's going to produce 16. Okay, now I did them already, Okay, but only one more time will I show you this, just so everybody's clear. I would then copy and paste this down and paste the values. Honestly, some of the times I get the 16 and I just manually type it in. Okay? But I got to get all the results. Once I have all the results, now I have all the data I need. I'm pretty close to all the data I need to create my chart. Okay? So typically when I want to create my chart, I won't do it on the table. I'll create another tab. Now, I did it already, but again, I'll take you through it. I can do it on the bottom and do it again. Okay? No big deal. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to copy this data. And just to be on the safe side, again, when I do my copy, I'm going to paste values. I want to make sure I've got the values. And then I'm also going to copy the codes, you know, the various ranges that relate to the item. And now I've done that. Now there's one more step I do. I could absolutely create a chart from this. In fact, I'll do it. I'll just highlight the data. I'll go Insert. A chart, usually for something like this, the chart I'm going to pick is, you know, is a bar chart. Okay? And it could be horizontal or vertical. Because a lot of them I'll usually do vertical. But for this one, and there's my chart. Okay? But I'm not thrilled with it being by numbers. Usually I'd prefer it by percentages, okay? So what I'm going to do is just one more step. And that is, I've got my basic data, I'm going to convert these to percentages. So you have to know a little math for this. The first thing I'm going to do is sum them. And it should come out to, 50, hopefully. Sometimes it doesn't because maybe somebody didn't answer, but I believe here it's 50, which was their 50 responses. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little formula. It's basically division. I'm going to take each item and I'm going to divide it by the total. Okay, so this is just a little trick. If you know a little Excel, I'm going to lock the total because this way I can actually copy down. Okay, so now I have all my data as percents. Doesn't look like percents yet. I just have to switch the way it's seen, and now it's percents. I can actually get rid of some of the digits, but that's fine. Those are my percents. Okay, now I have everything I need to create my beautiful chart. Okay, so all I'm going to do, interesting enough when you do it this approach, is I could then get rid of the numbers and copy this over, and that would work. But if I want to leave the numbers away, all I have to do is go and just select the percents. I'll show you how you get the labels in afterwards. You go to Insert. Again, I'm going to pick the same one. Now, of course, it's not showing me what the items are because I have to tell it, okay? So anytime you create a chart, you go to Select Data. You're going to get this tab, and I just have to tell it, you know, what's the horizontal range, and then I can just select the range. Okay, just make sure I get it right. I'm gonna do it again only because I burped on the holding it down. Okay. And now I've got my chart with my percents and my range. Now the only thing that's not there at this point was the description of the question, okay? So I'm just going to show you how you do that, okay? So I could certainly manually type in the name of the question, but if you want to use a little shortcut to have it put it in, and you have to do it this way, you have to go over, not to put the equal here, but to put the equal in the input bar up top, okay? And then I can go switch to my survey title and hit enter. And then it's then going to put, you know, the question in there. Now, there's a couple of other things I like to do. Anytime that you get a chart, you're going to get a chart tab up top, and, you know, and then at that point, one of the ones I like to do is play around with the data label. I usually like it on the outside end, which is I'm putting my percents, the ones that are over here, actually at the end of the bar, okay? And then at that point, I can even delete the table, and there's my table. Now, if I don't like that table, there's just a million different layout choices that really are all, various variations. This is not a workshop principally on all the ways you make pretty tables, charts, but it's, just to give you the basics of how you convert the data. Any questions so far? Okay. So, as you can see, it took a couple of minutes to do, but it's not hard. Okay? All right, so now we're going to look at a couple of other types of questions that maybe, just to give me an opportunity to give you more of the filtering capabilities within Excel. Because once you get this basic idea that the objective is to get your label and get your numbers, then the question is, how do you do it? Okay? So I purposely gave you the same question, but this time it was open-ended. Now, by the way, I didn't necessarily have to stick to the same ranges, meaning 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10, 10 to 15, but we're going to do that, okay, so that we get essentially the same results, okay? So what I'm going to do here is, once again, I'm going to do count, and we're going to go to the filtering, and I'm going to show you some additional fancier filtering options, okay? So here, you got all the numbers, and that's crazy. We don't want that. So one of the things that you can additionally do under filtering is you have all these other filtering choices. So one of the ones that I like is between, okay? And so what you're saying is greater than or equal to, and as soon as you put in one, it'll then give you a choice for another. Greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. So that's greater than 1 to 5, right? And now, did I do that right? I believe so. Okay. So, there was a little bit of a problem here, which is good that I did, because it shows you how you can easily screw up on this. Okay, so let me go back. When you finish doing a question and you move on to the other question, make sure you unfilter the previous question. Because I was wondering why I wasn't seeing any 5s here. Okay, so what I have to do is make sure that I unfilter my other questions. So I'm actually going to reset everything here. Okay. And I'm going to go back to my original question, because see, it's only showing 16 items, and I'm going to make sure that it's been wiped back to 50. This is very important, because you won't get good results. So I made this mistake on a survey, did about 5 charts that were wrong, and had to go back, okay, because I was wondering why we had 250 responses, I'm only getting 50 answers. So make sure you unfilter, and you can always tell if you're filtered versus unfiltered, because whenever you're filtered, this looks different. So notice here, I can make it bigger. Notice how this looks. It's got this little T here. But when I unfilter it, it goes back to being just like a little drop-down bar. Okay, so I got to make sure I'm starting at 50 here. Okay, so now let's do it again. See, actually, my screw-ups provide an opportunity to remind you of the things that you need to do, because I'm certainly not perfect, and it's a common mistake I make sometimes. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select between, and now it makes sense, because now I've got all the choices. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so now I'm going to go between. Oops, I selected the wrong thing. Between, and I'm having it be between 1 and 5. And so now that actually gives you the same answer, okay? Because you see, once you do a filter here, it affects the other one. So I've now got my 14, and what do? I copy it down, okay? So now once I've copied it down, remember you got to copy value, not copy amount, or it's going to reset it. You want to copy it to 14. And then I can come back in and change this to 6 to 10, and that in turn is going to give me my number for 6 to 10. I mean, I could do them all here. You get the idea? So even if my data is not in categories, if it's something like years of service, I can put it in categories. Because it's not going to create a wonderful chart to have everybody's years. It's a little bit too much. You usually want to group them in some way. Any questions on that? And obviously that's going to produce the exact same chart because I use the exact same range types. And as it turns out, I did it the right way. When I was picking the numbers here, I made sure they matched. Okay? Questions. So you have an ability to put, if it's numerical, a between. Okay? Everybody good? Now our next question, this is where it gets squirrely. Hold on one second, I'll be right back. I left my AC off because it gets kind of noisy when I'm doing this. And it's starting to get hot, so I'm gonna turn on a little fan. Hang on a second, I apologize. Okay? Yeah. All right. Any questions? Are we good? Okay, so this next one gets complicated, okay? It's not that it's complicated conceptually, it's just a little bit more work, okay? But I do want to tell you how to do it because you may get questions like this, okay? So our next question, what makes our next question a little tricky is that it's an open-ended question. Because I basically said, what's your biggest concern? And people could answer any way they wanted, in any language they wanted, okay? And usually these take a while. Initially, the first template I sent out, I didn't even do it. But I spent about an hour it took me a full hour just to do this, and I think you'll see why in a minute, okay? The potential to make errors is great, okay? So anytime you have open-ended questions, okay? I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, whoops, he caught me. Thank you. I forgot to take it back out. Right, exactly. If I tell you, Joe, how many times I've had to go back and redo stuff because I forget that, yes. Make sure that after that's a good other reason, by the way, to copy the results onto the chart tab, because then at that point it isn't going to change it. Yeah. But you have to take each question one at a time. So what makes this a little bit more complicated question is the coding. Okay, and that's a specific terminology, but it really means something here. So we asked people, what's your biggest concern? Okay, and again, I had 50 responses. So you can see from the responses, I got different answers. So one person goes COVID, and another person goes COVID-19, So how do you really, and all the other possible examples. So the way you can tell what you're really up against is by looking at your filter, because the filter is going to show you every unique response. So there might have been 3 people that wrote COVID, okay, and there might have been 7 that wrote COVID-19, but you're only going to see in your filter if there's a unique response each one, okay? So what you have to do first is to do your coding, and this is a little bit of work. You basically got to look at the responses you got, and you don't even have to look at all of these. I mean, you could have 200 responses. You really only have to look at what shows up in the filter, okay? And say, okay, which one of these are similar? A lot of times, by the way, if I just want to find them out, rather than copying them from the filter, what I'll do is another feature you can do in Excel, in tables, and that is I'll sort them in ascending order or descending order. So now I really only have to copy one of each one of these, okay? So, and I can actually even leave it in ascending order because it won't matter when you do your filters. Okay, so once again, when I want to do this, and I just apologize for zooming it the wrong way. Okay. Make it a little larger so you can see it. So I coded them. That's what I did. So, for example, even though there were something like 30 responses, I said I'm going to put anything having to do with COVID under COVID. Now, what makes this a little hard, I'm the first one to admit it, is it almost is helpful if you create all the ones that are similar and write them down. Put them on a little chart and say, these all are under COVID, because it's going to make your life easier when you do the filtering, okay? So we're going to make an attempt, see if I get it right, okay, when I do it again. So I did it already. And by the way, obviously there's some level of subjectivity here, because you are sometimes putting together items that are similar. But to have on a chart, COVID and COVID-19 as a separate item, that's not a really good chart, okay? So what I'm going to do now, and we're just going to, hopefully I'll get it right again, okay? So adjusting to online teaching. All the challenges dealing with online teaching. Okay, so now what I do is I go, and that's what I'm saying, if you write them out first, it's a little bit easier, is I'm going to look at all the ones that seem to be like that. So this is adjusting to online, because you can include more than one item in your filter. Adjusting to online, distance learning, online teaching, online learning, remote learning, okay, teaching online, teaching remotely. I think that's it. I'll treat working remotely separate because, which again, it's a subjective thing, because it may have been an office staff person, okay? And let's see if I got the same result as I got before when I do this. Oops, up here. So I did get it right again. If I tell you I was sweating that out a bit. Okay. So now once I have that, then I would do and copy it and then paste it into as a paste special and my value. So again, as you can imagine, this just takes some time because, you've got to do the coding. There really is no shortcut on coding. You just have to kind of do it. What I always wanted to make sure, though, is do I get to 50? If I'm not getting to 50, with there being 50 responses, then I know I missed something, and you have to go back. So if any of you have a more elegant way to figure this out, send it to me because I'd like to know. But really, I think that's just the process you have to do. Where Excel makes this easy is that you can do it all in one shot. Because I could have certainly totaled up all the different responses and then done a sum, but I can actually accomplish it right through the filter. Okay? So any questions on that? So not difficult conceptually, and Excel does the work for you, but you do have to make sure your code's right. And that's why I try to stay away from open-ended questions, but there are times when you want to use them. And every single unique answer, including a typo, is going to show up as a unique answer. So it's very likely if you're doing a survey of staff and they're typing in, you're going to get 3 teaching online because somebody, typed and left the H out of teaching or something, okay? But it can be done. Typically when I'm doing, like a closed-ended question, like one of the ones we did on the years, I could probably knock the whole thing off in about 10 to 15 minutes, including the chart, okay? If I'm doing something involved coding like this, probably going to take me 45 minutes to an hour, just to make sure that I've debugged it. But I'm pretty methodical about it, and I get the results I want. And then once you have it, then you can produce your chart. And once again, I'll take you through the process of producing the chart so that we have a chance to go over that step again. Okay. And then I'm going to go on and show you one that's a monster, and the best I could do under the circumstance. Okay. Okay, so once I have all my results, I'm going to copy them, and just in case there might have been in some sort of a, I pasted it wrong, I always paste it as a value. So I don't have any cell references here. I don't want this to be dynamic. I want it to be static when I'm doing work like this. Okay, and now I'm just going to, I did my coding already, so I'm now going to just select my, comparable coding choices and put that side by side. Make sure they line up. Okay, I'll just make this wide so you can see them. And then I'm going to go, and I know I'm repeating what I did before, but it's a good chance for you to see me do it. So I'm going to sum it up, make sure that I, in fact, have 50. Whoops, mistake. Okay, so let me go back in. Maybe I unfiltered something or did it wrong. Well, I got 50 here, so I wonder if I copied it wrong. I'm not above making mistakes in that. I had to do it, but I'm not perfect. Okay, let's paste it again. And if it's screwed up, I'm not fixing it. I'm just going to show you how you do it. Because as I said, there's a lot of debugging here. Whoops. Okay, 50. I must have made an error. Yeah, that's it. Okay. All right, so now once I have it and I know, there you go, that's how it works. But, here's the thing, watching me, these are the common errors you make when you're doing this stuff, But that's why it's so important to put a total on the bottom. Because if I didn't, I would have produced my chart and I'd be messed up, okay? So that's my control process. And as I mentioned to people, I was an accountant before there were computers. That's why we always did, we did the, tying out the column and the row just to make sure. So this is your control check. So once I have, and anyway, I need it to do the calculation. So then once again, to do this, and I can do it by range, I'm just going to make sure I get my percent, and now I want to lock that, because that'll save me the trouble. I'm going to get the same results, and then I'm just going to copy it down. I'm going to change the formatting. 2%, and I could leave it, but I'll take out, so now I have my percents. Now I have all the data I need to create my table. I always start with my data, so I go insert. Okay, so I'm going to save some time here. I could have showed it to you the wrong way, but generally if you have like a few items, a vertical chart works nice. If you have a lot of items, I always flip it, because otherwise you get a terrible layout. So I'll show it to you the wrong way first, okay? No, actually I won't. Yeah, no, I will. I got enough time. Okay, so if I do it here, and remember, because, I have a column in between, actually this might work okay, all right? But And by the way, if you create a chart and you want a different chart, you can just change the chart type. So I'm going to go back, and this time I'm just going to do a vertical chart because I think it lays out better. How many of you like the second one better? You know, any opinion on that? Just easier to read, right? Agreed? But, you know, again, you can switch them back and forth. Okay. So now just the last step is to put in the, we'll do a few more, you know, small steps, is to put in the title, which again, you could have done manually, but if you go up, you can select it and it'll put it right in the chart, okay? And again, maybe in this one I'm fine with the percents. I like to put the percents on the end. That's just a, you know, personal preference. So I'll go into chart design so you can see me do it again. It's the data labels, and I generally like it at the end, so I'm usually using outside end and put them there. Actually, I'm not sure which one I like better. I'll give you your preferences, and then once I do that, I can get rid of this, you know, and have it that way. So I'm not sure which is better. I think it looked better without it, like that. But we'll, you know, we get opinions on this. Okay, and then once you do that, and you've got your basic chart, then you can, you know, pick all the choices in terms of how you lay out your chart, but that's how you would do a chart. Okay, so I know I did a little bit of the shortcut because some of it I did before in all the coding, but that's basically the steps to create your chart. Now, once you have that chart, you know, you can then copy this chart into a PowerPoint or into a Word document if you want to generate a report, and that's just a question of copying and pasting. And you can copy it as a picture if you don't want it to be dynamic. All right, any questions so far? So it's not hard, but it is time-consuming when you're dealing with an open-ended question. Okay? Again, if we had a more closed-ended question, like if you go back to the original survey, which I'll just show you. And you have a question something like this, it's going to actually give you a different column for each one of these: square footage, cleanliness, desks. Okay? There is no lock tool. The way you can lock is by putting a $sign in front of the row and column address. So in this case, I put the $. You really actually only need the $sign under the row because we're not moving columns, but you can lock them both. If you are on a PC and you don't want to do this manually, you can go into that part of the formula and hit F4. It's a little trickier on a Mac, but you can do it, but it involves like multiple key steps. But if you have function keys on your computer, you can just toggle around to F4. I usually just manually put them in, okay? But there's no lock tool. You have to actually do that. Once you do that, then that tells it to lock that item and you can copy it down, okay? All right. So as I said, I was just going to show you like an easier question again. And then I want to show you one crazy one, which I did not have a perfect solution to. I did the best I could with it, but I want to show you what it is. Okay? Yeah, I understand. And I'm going to record it anyway, so whatever you miss, Rita, thank you for joining us. All right. So it doesn't matter which one I pick. One of the questions was work environment. Now, why this is an easy question is there are only 4 choices on the chart. Substandard, adequate. I don't have to code. Okay? This is like years, and even has fewer of them than the years. So this one would take me 10 minutes to do, not even. Okay? So the first thing I have to do is just select my various items. Then I go to my filter. And again, I'm going to see all of them. Now, it's a little tricky here because there were a couple that were blanks. So they're not going to get counted. Okay? There is a way to take account of the blanks if you want to make sure that you tie out to your 50. Okay? And once again, let me make sure, Joe, you're my protector here. Make sure I don't have anything locked, which I did. Okay. Now, actually, the reason that's showing locked is once you hit ascending, you get that. Okay? But it's not, there are no filters, so I'm okay. All right? So, all right, let's look at this. So here I only have 4 choices, right? If you want to count your blanks, and there actually were, I believe there were 2 blanks, maybe not in this one, but another one. A couple of them where no one answered. There is a way to do that, okay? But we're not going to worry about that now, okay? So what we're going to do is, once I get my coding, I'm just going to go, well, just give me the items that are substandard, and that's going to give me 1, okay? And then I'm just going to copy that down, okay? Actually, I had an error when I did this because I had 2 here, okay? And then I'm going to do the same thing for above average, and that's going to give me my above average number, and then I'm going to get my numbers, okay? And then once I have my numbers, I can produce my chart. Okay, questions? All right, so we've got a couple minutes left. Let me show you a crazy question, okay? All right, so it's interesting because the person who gave me this asked me to help them with it, I think signed up. I don't know if she came in today. Sometimes they intended to. But this is a monstrous question because what it did is it asked people to rank. So not only were there various choices, but they had to pick them. I think it actually gave them only a limited number of choices. But as you can see, each one of these is unique. This is impossible to do a chart for. It would take hours and hours to get unique results. So I said to the assistant superintendent, can't do it. What I can do, though, for you is get you a chart based on people's first choice. Okay, that I can do. Okay? So that I'm going to show you. Okay? So let's look at how we do that. Okay? And then we'll call it a day. I won't even do all of them. I'll just do a couple. Okay? So here I'm going to go again to my tab. These are all about the choices. See, the most common one you're going to do is it's just going to select. But again, you don't have to eyeball this one. You can have Excel do some of the work for you. You can use the function begin with and type in whatever was the first beginning part. So I can type in self-management. And now it's going to give me all of the items that start with self-management. Now I have to make sure that, it would be helpful if I were I am in the table. Hold on. I have to go to my table and make sure that I selected total row. Okay. So once I did that, then it gives me, you actually don't even have to do that. Use a wildcard separator. I could actually do, you're saying, in other words, convert it into columns. Yeah, theoretically you could do that. I could, separate out this into columns, but I'm not sure that would, in the end, help me, because I'd still have to treat each column as unique. You're saying, in other words, have the column be the second choices and third choices. Actually, that is an interesting solution that might have worked. I'm glad I didn't think of it, because then I would have had about 5 times as much work. Instead, I told them, I'm just going to give you your first choices, okay? But yeah, you could do that. You could use a delimiter that would separate out the results of each of these into different columns. Yes, you're a sharp guy, Joe. Okay, all right. But I just want to show you that in some cases, maybe I'll just look at the first choice, which is what I ended up doing, because there were 20 of these charts. Okay, and then I can get my result. But I did want to show you that you can, if you have something that's really large, you can just select the first item. Okay? Any questions? Any questions? Are we good? All right. So what do you say we call it a day? I will make the recording available to everybody. As I said, takes a little bit of time, but this was probably mostly, in the end, really a workshop about the filtering capabilities within tables, which again can be used for a lot of other things besides just taking survey data and creating charts. It can be used for other types of sorting. But this is like a unique example of where it really comes in handy. Okay, thank you. See you all soon.